What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImmaCSports.
Instagram is also at ImmaCSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 231. The Super Bowl recap episode, if you will. Just had Super Bowl 59, and, the Chiefs got their ass beat by Philadelphia, something I was definitely not expecting. That's a pick you got right. We're going to break down that game, players of the game, all of that. We'll even get to the future and even a little NBA, too. Because that trade deadline was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get right into the opener, I guess. And you could pretty much say Super Bowl for both me and Skyler here.
Yeah.
But we both went in different directions. And I'll let him go first on his because I'm just going to kind of parlay off what he's saying here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jimmy Butler to the Warriors trade. I can understand if you're upset about the contract extension. That's a lot of money, $60 million for a 30-plus-year-old, but that's kind of exactly what they needed right now. We saw in his first game, he played excellent. He got to the free throw line over 10 times. Exactly what the Warriors are looking for. And Miami shouldn't be too upset either because Andrew Wiggins is a guy who's going to shoot a lot more threes. That's what they need. He plays great defense, just like Jimmy. But how the trade ended up going down, originally, the Warriors got Jimmy Butler, 2 second-round picks and some cash from the Heat. The Heat get Andrew Wiggins, like I said, slow-mo Kyle Anderson, Davion Mitchell from the Raptors, and this year's Warriors first-round pick. The Jazz swoop in. They get KJ Martin from the Sixers, Josh Richardson from the Heat, a bunch of second-round picks. The Pistons get Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder, who was then flipped again a couple more times. I think he ended up back in Detroit, but he was in Utah for a minute there. And then the Raptors get a bunch of cap space and PJ Tucker to be a captain, I guess. Overall, I'm happy that the Warriors did something because when you got a guy like Steph Curry running the show, I don't think you can have a year off. You have to at least try to get in the tournament.
Yeah. And last week, too, on the show, I think I specifically talked about how I didn't want us to trade for Jimmy Butler. But now seeing the, games actually happen and it actually being in motion and just how all that stuff works with those two dudes, Jimmy and Steph specifically, I really like it. And one thing that the Warriors have long searched for ever since Kevin Durant left is a really reliable second scoring option. And by reliable, I mean a guy that's like not just based off of three-pointers and needing to have a really good night from three to score points. And Jimmy Butler's the exact opposite of that. He's going to drive to the paint. He's going to get to the foul line and kind of do the less variant type things when it comes to scoring that are just more consistent and more things that you can count on. And when he's giving you 20 a game and taking the space that he gets, it's just going to open more things up for Steph. And we've seen it already in the first two games, comeback victory over the Bulls, and then a good victory last night against the Bucks, even though they did not have Giannis. Still a good road win there. First road win in Milwaukee since 2018, I think I saw for the Warriors. Wow. But yeah, big win. Big couple of wins, and the duo looks to be paying off well. So when we do our NBA power rankings here in a little bit, first NBA power rankings of the season, that is, with NFL season now being done, we might see the Warriors in it despite the record not being the greatest.
That'll be fun.
Moving on, though, defensive player, rookie of the week. Had an absence last week because there was no games. We only had one game this week, but we all know it definitely mattered in the grand scheme of things. So player of the week, do we just take the easy pick and go with Jalen Hurts? What do you do?
That's what I did. I took Jalen Hurts. I think you could argue Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, but they don't really have those kind of stats that you can pull up easily. So, yeah, it's the MVP of the game. Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes in this one. He threw some beautiful deep balls, and he ran for 72 in a score. It was exactly what he needed to do. That first bad interception, I was like, that's old Jalen Hurts right there. But when Patrick Mahomes does it 10 times more than you're doing all right, I guess. That kind of game.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts played really good. Outside of that interception, I thought he played one of his best games in his career. Definitely helped his legacy case. But I do want to make an honorable mention even though he didn't have the greatest, stats game, maybe I do think Saquon Barkley deserves a mention here because that's the game plan. What it was for the Chiefs to
Yep.
just stop Saquon Barkley, and they kind of just ignored everything else. All the attention went to Saquon. We saw them do a great job with him on the ground. But if it wasn't for that presence that he's had the entire year, we don't see the Jahan Dotson deep ball. We don't see the Devonta Smith deep ball to really just stick the dagger in the Chiefs. We see a whole different game plan. Maybe Saquon has a good game, but I think without that just that need to devote so much attention to Saquon, we don't see the Eagles and Jalen Hurts have the game that they did. So definitely shout out to him. Greatest running back season of all time. I think we can say that now as a
They
staple.
won it. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to Defensive Player of the Week. I guess you could choose anyone that appeared in the game for the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball, but who was the guy that you thought deserved it the most?
Yeah, I wrote on here, you could pick literally anyone from the Eagles defense and I'd be okay with it. I'm going to force myself to just pick one. So I'm going to go with Josh Sweat for his 2.5 sacks. He dominated these playoff games when guys like Bryce Huff and Brandon Graham, couldn't get it going. He had himself a very nice payday this offseason after these games.
Yeah, I went with Josh Sweat as well too. Just the pass rush for the Eagles won them this game as well too. It is ridiculous to see. Obviously, the huge stat now is they didn't blitz on any one of Patrick Mahomes' 42 dropbacks and still got pressure like 41% of the time or whatever it was. Just ridiculous numbers. And I think it was Jalen Hurts who said it after the game is that defense wins championships.
Yeah.
And we saw that today. And even though they don't have like a crazy, huge name outside edge rusher now at this point, Josh Sweat stepped up and had the game of his life in the biggest game of his life to get his first Super Bowl ring. Rookie of the week, though, this one's fun.
Yeah, I got an honorable mention to Xavier Worthy. He's becoming the top target in Kansas City very quickly. And I think Kansas City does get way more vertical with him next year. But I'm going to have to go with the birthday boy, Cooper DeJean. He had the pick six on Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl in his rookie season. Talk about a guy who makes a great first impression here for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that Xavier Worthy had the most quiet 8-catch, 157-yard, 2-touchdown performance in Super Bowl history. But Cooper DeJean is the rookie of the week. His pick six, getting into the end zone as well, too, definitely meant a ton for that Eagles team. On his 22nd birthday, his first career interception, what a moment for him. Definitely now he's not going to be getting skipped up by LeBron on the dap up. He'll be getting that next time around. And I'm sure LeBron even probably reached out to him on social media or whatever to say something to him because Cooper DeJean had himself a game, and he's making every other team pay for not taking him in the first round and being that first pick of the second round, I want to say, this past draft, or one of the first few picks of the second round. So, great rookie season, and it all culminated or cultivated, whatever, into that pick six on Sunday night. So, into the Super Bowl recap. Everybody watched the game. It's not like we're saying anything here. But I did want to say just the whole game, and maybe this was due to the comeback that we saw 8 years ago with Brady and the Falcons, that it felt like at some point that the Eagles, or not the Eagles, the Chiefs were going to turn it on and just get right back into the game and make it a one-possession game once they got to the fourth quarter. I think the Zach Bond interception at the 10, 14-yard line, whatever it was, really made me be like, oh, shit. This might just be a blowout and the Eagles are going to kill them. Do you have a moment within that game that you thought kind of the same thing as I did there, or did you just, never doubt Patrick Mahomes even to the last minute on that one?
No, absolutely. The Zach Bond interception was definitely one of those moments for me. Patrick Mahomes got straight up embarrassed the other night, and he looked just as bad as he did in Tampa when they lost before. It really, really switched very quickly from a 28-3 kind of vibe to what happened against Tom Brady, obviously. And it may not have been the most exciting last game, but I think there's definitely going to be some long-term effects in the NFL. I don't think teams are going to be as afraid of Kansas City They know that someone other than Tom Brady has beaten them in the Super Bowl. And some of those regular season games for seeding is going to be important. But I don't think they're going anywhere. An embarrassment like this is something you may need to fuel the fire. Travis Kelce's a shadow of himself. I wanted to throw that in there. It doesn't necessarily fit with the sentence before, but he didn't look very good. But also Philly is not going anywhere. I know I'm going off topic here, but this is how I feel. I think they have the formula to win these important games now, and the youngest roster in the league. Tom Brady, I think, is also a big winner. I don't think that this game will define Patrick Mahomes' career or anything, but definitely make people remember there's no one quite like Brady in the Super Bowl. And yeah, that's around that Zach Bond interception is when I started thinking all these things. There's no one quite like Tom Brady.
Yeah, a couple other takeaways for me too. Like you said towards the end of your little spiel there, the Tom Brady comparison I think is definitely going to be on hold, or the GOAT debate at least is going to be on hold for another 5 to 10 years at least. We never saw Tom Brady once really just get abused in the Super Bowl, and we've seen Patrick Mahomes now twice have that happen to him. I know in the grand scheme of things, you look at his numbers on Sunday, and they don't look that bad. 21 for 32, 257, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. And obviously wasn't getting any favors from his offensive line. But he got blown out twice now at this point in the Super Bowl. And I think that definitely is going to mean something when we look back 20 years from now and compare the Patrick Mahomes' career when it's all said and done compared to Tom Brady. And then also another thing as well too, Eagles just really emphasize the importance of having the most well-rounded roster to win a Super Bowl as well too, because if you have a weakness, you're going to get exposed, especially in the Super Bowl, because that's when you're facing likely the best coordinators and probably the best head coach as well too. And we saw just Kansas City's inability to run the ball the entire year really be put on display. On Sunday, they only had, I'd say, 6 legitimate carries. I think they gave one late to Samaje Perine, and Patrick Mahomes had 4 scrambles, but 3 for Hunt, 3 for Pacheco. And they just never really got the run game going. I know Philly didn't really allow any team to get the run game going, but you have to at least show it to this Philly team to mess up the pass rush, get more people in the box, and just kind of just change things around and just not make it a drop-back football game, which it was for pretty much the final, 2.5 quarters of this game. So if you have a weakness, it's going to get exposed at some point or another. I think I'm going to definitely take that into account next year when we're doing power rankings and stuff. Hey, if you aren't good in this specific area, you're going to have to get knocked down for that, because if you play this complete game like the Eagles do, I know they don't drop back 40 times with Jalen Hurts or anything like that. That's not how they play. But they still have the ability to show the deep pass game, the short intermediate route pass game as well too, while just having this ridiculous run game and having the crazy defense as well too. Feels like we should have seen it with this, and I said that last week as well too with the Eagles in comparison to the Detroit Lions. But maybe we were giving Mahomes a bit too much credit during the season to dig this team out of a hole that obviously had some holes on the offensive line and in the run game. So
yeah, everybody knew they needed 2 new tackles, not just one to swing. They needed 2, but I guess it's after they won without Tyreek Hill. It made me think, okay, I'm never going to doubt these guys again. But now it's time.
I'm not even going to blame the Kansas City defense either. They were just in a pretty tough spot from the get-go. Obviously handled Saquon Barkley well, and it's not like Jalen Hurts had this, ridiculous 350-yard passing game or something like that. Only 221. Obviously, was super effective on the ground, and the designed run game or his scrambles as well too. But I thought the Chiefs defense played well. Just you can't have those big glaring holes, and I think we're going to see Kansas City address that pretty immediately going into the offseason as well too, especially with how deep this running back class is in the draft this year.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, though, this is kind of a post-Super Bowl tradition for us. Our way too early awards for the next year. So in this case, it'll be this year, technically. With 2025, we have MVP, Opoy, Depoy, Oroy, D-Roy, Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and the Super Bowl matchup / winner. So let's get started with the MVP. We'll start with the big guns. Who do you have as the MVP for next football season?
I'm going to stick with the betting favorite, Lamar Jackson, to get his third MVP. Well, we mentioned it at the end of last season's award picks that there is nobody else putting up these numbers with the same efficiency, the same rushing, and no one probably will ever. So I think Lamar Jackson's a pretty safe bet for MVP. I think
Yeah,
Jaden Daniels and Caleb are close, but maybe not yet.
interesting. Yeah, I went away from Lamar. Just the voter fatigue this year kind of deterred me a little bit to the point that maybe it might be tough for him to get MVPs in the future unless he gets over the Super Bowl hump, which shouldn't have any correlation, but for some reason it does. So my MVP, I went with Jaden Daniels. Young gun, second year. I would hope he gets better in his second year as well, too, just natural progression of things. And if he does, and Washington does what they need to do this offseason by hopefully getting him another receiver or just more additions on that offense, I think him being an MVP is pretty easy to see. And he's obviously got the ridiculous numbers to go with it as well, too, that could be expected. Offensive Player of the Year, always a fun award.
I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs. If this guy gets the keys to the offense, he's going to tear up the league like Saquon and Henry just did. Obviously, those guys are still going to be in the conversation. The only question is, does David Montgomery keep his carries, or is Gibbs going to be allowed to go for a LaDainian Tomlinson type season with 20 touchdowns? I think he's definitely capable. There's going to be receivers in the running too. Things are pretty spread out these days when it comes to it. We saw Jamar Chase didn't win this season, even though he had nearly Cooper Kupp numbers. Saquon obviously deserved it. I'm riding with the running backs.
Yeah, I went with Jahmyr Gibbs as well, too. Like you said, the keys to the offense is a big thing. If he gets the ball as many times as Saquon did this past year in the regular season, like 350 carries plus 30 catches or whatever, so just 380 total touches, Jahmyr Gibbs will win Offensive Player of the Year. He'd be right around that 2,000-yard mark rushing. He'd have probably more receiving because that's what they like to do a little bit more over in Detroit right now. Will he get all those touches? Probably not. I definitely think the Lions are kind of I don't know how to motivated to kind of handicap him a little bit and not wear off the tread of his tires too early in his career. But if he gets the keys, there's nobody stopping this man. He's one of the best running backs in football, and I think we could see it all really work together next year in year 3 for him. Defensive Player of the Year is a bit more interesting because there is no clear shot like there is to Jahmyr Gibbs or Jamar Chase or something like that. So who do you have for Deep Boy?
Yeah, you're right. It's all about opportunity with this award. So I'm going to go with Will Anderson of the Texans. I see him at plus 1,200 online right now. Former number 2 pick, just had an 11-sack season while he was banged up. He's not even scratching the surface of his 20-sack potential yet, and I think it could be next year. Maybe not. Maybe we have another year of the Watts and the Garretts and the corners, but I feel like this guy's not too far away.
Yeah, I like that choice because I went with Myles Garrett for mine. Obviously requested trade. Will that get, actually happen? We don't know yet. The Browns could just say, no, we're not trading you, and maybe he just doesn't play. But I like the odds right now of Myles Garrett. If he gets traded to a team that already has a good defense and is just pairing Garrett up with another guy on the edge, like if he were to go to the Niners or the Raiders or something like that, which I think Myles Garrett is kind of inclined to do, to go to a good team, it's lights out, man. Like, this guy has 20 sack season written all over him, and I don't think we've seen the best yet from Myles Garrett, even in this ridiculous career that he's had. Offensive Rookie of the Year, obviously, these Rookie of the Year awards are fun to do because they're involving people that aren't in the league yet. So who do you have for O'Roy?
I have all of the confidence in the world in Ashton Genty. I've watched him closely for 3 years now. He is an every down back. And especially if he goes in the top 12, like he's projected to be around, they're going to use him as much as possible. I expect him to be NFL ready from the jump. Instead of trying to find that undervalued receiver to win, I'm going to go with the workhorse.
I have two different guys here because I don't know exactly how they're going to rule this. But my original choice is J.J. McCarthy. I don't know if they
Interesting.
have a Ben Simmons type situation there where you are eligible in your second year if you didn't get to play in your first year. But if he is eligible, I think it's a layup for him to win. Kevin O'Connell's system, two good wide receivers, good running back, pretty much, has had every single quarterback in that system succeed. And a year where he just kind of just watched everything on the sidelines and understood the system, not going into anything new in year two. I think it'd be a layup for him to win if he is eligible.
Yeah.
If he's not eligible, I think it's a quarterback award. I hate saying that because I thought many years ago that Josh Jacobs should have won it over Kyler Murray. And that's from that moment on, I realized,
Yeah.
I've never taken anyone but a quarterback in this award. So I'm going to go Shedeur Sanders. Right now, I would have him projected to go to the Raiders. I think out of like the Titans, the Browns, the Raiders, the Giants, those top six teams that are looking for a quarterback potentially, the Raiders probably have the best offensive system to go into out of any of those guys. And so I think that would be the easiest way for Shedeur to win Rookie of the Year, and I think that's what would end up happening. So J.J. McCarthy, original one, if not eligible, then go to Shedeur.
Apparently, Woody Johnson loves Shedeur, so we'll see what happens there.
Not going to be there at 7, Buster.
Yeah.
Let's trade up. On to Defensive Rookie of the Year. I would say this is a layup, but
yeah.
Come on.
Well, with all the injury concerns in this class, I'm once again going to stick with the likely favorite here in Abdul Carter. When a former speed demon linebacker puts on weight to go rush the passer, sometimes you get Anthony Barr, but also sometimes you get Lawrence Taylor. So I'm going to continue to play the odds here. It's a similar body type to the past two winners, Jared Verse and Will Anderson. I like those odds.
Yeah, it could be fun to pick Travis Hunter or Will Johnson if you really want to. But I'm going with the easy choice, probably minus odds at this point in Abdul Carter. Just a full-on prospect. Unfortunately for Abdul, he's not going to be playing for his Eagles because they are picking at the end of the first round. And he's likely going to be the guy who goes number 1 on draft night. So I got Abdul Carter for my D-Roy. Just going to be a ridiculous pass rusher. And I assume that we see that from day one in his NFL career. Coach of the Year, always a fun award.
Yeah, not as fun for you because I'm going to go with Sean Payton. I don't necessarily think that this Broncos run is going to last forever, but when you have great young quarterback, Hall of Fame coach, and only a few pieces away from challenging Kansas City last year, I think they could go on a crazy 2-year run while the Raiders rebuild. And Payton should probably retire soon, but I think this is kind of a great situation for him right now. I think they could go on a couple of runs.
Now, my Coach of the Year is kind of being determined a little bit by the end of this past year, and I think voters weren't really ready for him or to vote for him. And then when it got to the playoffs, they're realizing, hey, maybe we should have put a vote in for this guy. And that's Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
I think he has a good next year as well, too. Obviously, I picked Jaden Daniels to win MVP, so that would likely mean that the Commanders are in a pretty good spot come next January. And if they do win 13, 14 games, whatever it is, and compete with the Eagles for the division, I definitely think Dan Quinn would be the guy that gets the nod for Coach of the Year and the job that he's done over there in Washington. Next up, Comeback Player of the Year.
I'm going with Aiden Hutchinson. I think guys like McCaffrey and J.J. McCarthy and Nico Collins are going to be talked about here for most of the season, but the severity of the Hutchinson leg injury has me leaning to him if he is immediately back to himself. If he's at all-pro level, absolutely this is his. And I guess we just got to wait and see what he looks like, but I think he could do it.
I want J.J. McCarthy here. If he plays, again, Kevin O'Connell's system, I think it's going to work out very well for him. So J.J. McCarthy is my Comeback Player of the Year. I like the other guys like CMC, Nico Collins. Aiden Hutchinson is a great one I didn't even think about. But CMC, I think, is starting to get a little old, unfortunately, which I don't like saying. Aiden Hutchinson, I mean, that's injury is so big that I don't even know what capacity he's going to look like next year. And Nico Collins, nothing against him. He's just a wide receiver in comparison to a quarterback, and they're going to prop up a quarterback any chance they get in the NFL. So JJ McCarthy is my pick for comeback player of the year, which leads us to the Super Bowl matchup prediction for next year. What do you got here?
Yeah. I do think that Kansas City and Philly meet again for a third time and a tiebreaker. It's just not going to be next season. I think we're due for some parity. So I'm going to have Baltimore over Washington in Super Bowl 60. There's nothing like two squads from the Northeast playing a Super Bowl in Northern California. It would just be hilarious. Like the Clemson Alabama game there a few years back. There was 30% capacity for a national championship. Lamar really needs to get to a Super Bowl. Not in my opinion, but probably in his and the media's. And for the other side, the NFC is kind of like the Wild West right now with all these young quarterbacks. So, like you were talking about with Washington, great quarterback, great coach. They could definitely pull something out. Maybe they're a year or two away, and I'm off on my prediction, but I think it'd be really cool to get Baltimore and Washington in the same Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah, I originally had Philly versus KC down again, and that was the boring pick. But I wanted to be a bit more interesting.
Yep.
So I went with Washington in the not the AFC, the NFC. I do think I am less confident about this one than the AFC just because they look so far apart last year, even in the NFC Championship. And I know it's a completely different year next year, so it could be completely different. Maybe someone gets hurt in the NFC Championship game, or they don't even play because Philly loses in the wild card round in Green Bay or something like that. Who knows? But I like Washington pick here. I think their defense is definitely going to be the thing that hinges on this. Has to get a lot better if they want to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, as well as the run game as well too. They got to rely on that. Cliff Kingsbury can't just be this drop back and pass type guy all day. But having your quarterback having the ability to run definitely makes it a bit easier to scheme up a run game that is effective. With that. And then on the AFC side, I think Mahomes gets slain earlier this year for once. And I also have it by the Baltimore Ravens. It feels like Lamar's gone on about 7 different revenge tours now at this point. Hopefully the one next year works out for him. Didn't get the MVP, lost to Josh Allen, and kind of came up third in that AFC trio of QBs of him, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes. And I think he's going to be out for something next year. I think hopefully they get him a receiver as well, too, to kind of shore up that pass game. And then the defense, I assume, is going to be firing as well, too, because they got a lot of young studs. So I have Baltimore versus Washington. Somehow, same matchup as you because we're boring.
We never talked about this.
Yeah, and I also have Baltimore winning this one. I think just a more complete team. More experienced quarterback. I'm not going to mean too much in this case because it'd be both their first Super Bowl. But I would have Baltimore winning that matchup. That would occur in about 363 days from now.
That'd be fun, man. Shout out DMV.
Yeah. Moving on, though, to our top 12 NBA power rankings. First time that we really talked NBA to a full extent since October, November. We had a little talk last week about the trade deadline, but there was no our opinion on how good teams are at that point. So we will get into it now. Just top 12, top 15 can be a little weird, and top 10 I felt was a little bit too small. So do you have any team outside of your top 12 that you do want to talk about?
Yeah, I ended up not putting the Warriors in. I think they're going to struggle defensively, but I'm not too confident about my 12 either. So when I get there, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. I have 3 teams just out that I did want to talk about. The first is the Clippers. Good record right now, 23-29. I just don't think they're good enough on either side of the ball to be top 12 team, in my opinion. Maybe their defense is up there, but their offense I don't like a ton. Orlando, I have as well, too. Struggling recently.
They're hard.
Yeah, haven't really found the rhythm once Paulos came back, but I do have them just out. And then also Dallas. I saw Daniel Gafford is hurt now too. Yep. So that goes along with Anthony Davis, who could be out for a while. It looks like So Dallas is just out of my 12 as well too. If that team was healthy, they'd definitely be in it. So we'll start off with number 12. What do you have there?
At number 12, I do have the Clippers just sneaking in. They're sixth in the West. I didn't really want to include them over Golden State, but when you do the math, they're really good at their new home. Kawhi is back. We've had career resurgence from Norman Powell and Zubats. That should be enough to get them a top 5 or 6 seed in the West.
Number 12 for me is going to be where I slot Milwaukee. Currently fifth in the East without Giannis as of today, but he should be healthy soon enough. Still kind of figuring things out with the Dame Lillard, acquisition that happened, a while ago now at this point, but never really found the rhythm from that. That's why they're not higher on this list. Obviously got the ability to be better too. Just not that good away from Milwaukee this year. Number 11.
At number 11, I got Indiana. They're fourth in the East right now, and they're always going to be a team that looks to play spoiler. They took down the Knicks last year, but I don't know how I feel about Halliburton taking a step back for Siakam. It seems like if you're going to do this, you got to go hit on another scorer in the draft because you are not ready to go on a finals run yet.
Yeah. I also have the Pacers at number 11, like you said, fourth in the East right now, 29 and 22. Does feel like right now that they're playing with two guys at 1B instead of a 1A and a 1B. And that's not the rhythm for success once we get to the playoffs, usually. So I don't know how I feel about them winning more than a series this year. But I do like Indiana in a regular season comparison to other teams. Number 10.
At 10, I got Milwaukee. They're fifth in the East, a little worse record than Indiana. Dame is playing well. They traded Middleton for Kuzma, but Giannis has pretty much been injured since their last title run. It's hard to count on this mess to keep it together for an entire summer. So I wouldn't count on them making another finals run with Giannis.
Number 10 for me is going to be where I slot the Timberwolves. A bit of a worse regular season than last year, but that's understandable after you trade your second best player in Karl-Anthony Towns in the offseason. Still trying to figure out exactly how that's working for them still. But Ant is the guy. They know that. Sitting at 7th in the West, 30 and 24. Good team in the West. I don't see him winning a playoff series, though, with how competitive the Western Conference is. Number 9.
Yeah, number 9 is where I got the T-Wolves. Despite the slow start, these guys already have a reputation in the Western Conference. Edwards, like you said, and Naz Reid, they're both excellent in the fourth quarter. And Gobert, surprisingly, still kicking as a top defender after all the drama he's been through. They're going to be involved.
Yeah. Number 9 for me, I have the Houston Rockets sitting at 33 and 20 right now. Probably one of the more surprising teams to have it really all go well this year. Usually we see something go wrong with the Rockets. But their defense has carried them only 108.7 points per game, which seems crazy to say because that feels like a lot, but it's not. Rockets defense has been good. Have been kind of falling down in the West as of recent, though. On number 8.
At number 8 is where I got the Knicks, third in the East. Here's the thing, though. The Eastern Conference is just simply not as deep as the West. I love watching the Knicks. I think with some more time, Brunson and Cat will figure it out, but they are extremely prone to choking in the playoffs. So their title odds are going to take a hit from me, and the Eastern Conference will not be talked about for me for a while on this list.
Number 8 for me, this is where my bias is showing. I have the Warriors here. I know they're 27 and 26, the worst record out of any team on this list. But with how these past 2 games have gone, it feels like a brand new team, and everything just kind of reset for the Warriors, and that's exactly what they needed. They don't have Kuminga right now, still have won their last 2 games. Steph is really starting to turn it on. Averaging 23 on the year, but the past 4 games he's had at least 32, I want to say. And Jimmy Butler's averaging 20-plus since he's gotten there. So I like the Warriors team. I think they have the perfect complement to Steph, and call me biased, but I'm never going to count the Warriors out as long as they have Stephen Curry on their team. Number 7.
At number 7, I got the Lakers. They are now fourth in the West. Any team with LeBron James is going to be dangerous in the playoffs. Now you add Luka Doncic, that pure scorer they've been looking for, who was just in the finals. They get bumped way up on my list for adding Luka. I don't expect them to go to the finals, though.
Number 2 for me is going to be where I have the Memphis Grizzlies. Number 2 in the Western Conference right now, 35-17. Maybe have them a bit lower than you do. But I don't know. This team just feels like it's going to miss something once it gets to the playoffs. And they've obviously haven't really gone past the second round of the playoffs either, so they don't have that deep playoff experience. It's a young team, of course, which helps. But I don't know. I don't see them being as good as these other top 6 teams as I have once we get to the real months of April, May, and June. Number 6.
At number 6, I got the Houston Rockets, who you just talked about, 5th in the West right now. It's another roster that's not quite ready for the finals. Maybe you trade Şengün in favor of Tari Eason and Jabari Smith, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The Jalen Green, Amen Thompson duo is going to be really dangerous. These guys are figuring out how to do it. Amen Thompson's biggest flaw was, will he ever learn how to shoot? Well, he just did, and he's been averaging a lot of points down the stretch.
Number 6 for me is going to be where I have the Denver Nuggets. Defense is the problem with this team, but they've won a championship without playing the greatest defense before by just having this overpowering offense. I don't think that they're going to be the team playing representing the Western Conference once we get to June, but they have a better chance than what most teams do, in my opinion. So I have them at number 6 for me. Number 5.
Number 5, I have the Grizzlies. Right now, 2nd in the West. Ja Morant's always going to be questionable. But the youngsters, Zach Edey and Jalen Wells, have been perfect fits so far. Sometimes you just got to nail the role players and everything else starts to figure itself out, honestly. And the reason they're above Houston is because they've been destroying them lately. They're kind of rivals. They play back-to-backs against each other. So I think they deserve this spot.
Yeah. Number 5 for me is where I slot the Lakers, 32-20, or not 29, 32-19 as of today. If this was the Mark Williams Lakers and they had that roster without Dalton Connect and actually had that trade go through, I might be inclined to put them a bit higher. But they don't. They still kind of have that missing piece that I think could be exposed against some of these teams that really like to drive to the paint, like OKC does with the guy who's leading the league in scoring in SGA. But I'll talk about the Thunder later and where I have them. But as of right now, I have the Lakers at 5. On to number 4.
At number 4, I got the Denver Nuggets, 3rd in the West, but I think they're number 2 in the West based off of the power rankings. Who knows how long Jokic is going to last in the NBA, the way he plays. And they don't really seem to care about the regular season anymore. But Nikola Jokic has been quietly on one of the biggest tears of his career. He's averaging 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists per game. These guys definitely have the championship makeup. I'm not going to drop them down because they didn't win, a certain amount of games in a row, like, say, Cleveland. They just don't care as much.
Number 4 for me is where I have the Knicks, 34-18 right now. Like you said, the East isn't as good as the West, but I think the Knicks roster kind of passes the eye test for me. Their first 7 guys that they have, I really like, and I think once you get past 7 or 8, that's kind of where the playoff, rotations kind of cut off, especially under Tom Thibodeau. Yeah. Josh Hart might just play all 48 every single game the rest of the way out. So I like the Knicks roster. I think they're prepared for big minutes as well, too. I just don't think they're as good as the top 2 teams in the East, and that's really all that matters. Number 3.
At number 3, I have the OKC Thunder. They're the top team in the West right now. Holmgren got hurt. Hartenstein stepped right in and dominated. They got a guy for every single situation. Like you mentioned, SGA, they got the leading scorer in the league right now. It's looking like it could be their year to win the West. And I know things didn't start off perfect, but hey, they're still the 1 seed, and they don't have any slip-ups like they did last season when people were wondering, they're the 1 seed, but do we really trust them? I think we do now.
Yeah. Number 3 for me, maybe a bit of a shocker here, but I do have the Cavs at 3. They just lost to Boston a couple of nights ago. I know they have the technically second best record in the NBA at 43-10 right now. just once we get to the playoffs, I just for some reason I feel like they're not going to be able to get it done against Boston, and that's what matters. I know I've said that a few times now at this point, but that's really what it comes to. And I think Boston's just a better team than them on both sides. Uh, so Cleveland would be just right below them, which kind of indicates where I have the rest of my list. So
Yeah.
number two.
Number two, I have the Cavs, number one team in the East, of course. I think in a hypothetical finals matchup, I would probably take Cleveland because they're the only team that could match up with their size against the Thunder. They've already scored 100 points plus 43 times this season. That's number one in the league. Their defense hasn't gone anywhere. Mobley's taking that next big step. If they're going to do it, it's going to be right now.
Number two, where I have Boston. They did it last year. They won the finals, of course. Pretty much just the exact same team. So there's no reason for them not to be in, the number one and number two spots. Maybe not as good as a regular season as the Cavs, but they have the head-to-head matchup right now. And I think they're going to be just fine in the two seed once we get to the playoffs. So I like Boston as the number two spot. Number one.
Number one for me is still the Boston Celtics. Second in the East, but I don't care. So far, it feels like Boston is just going to steamroll whoever comes out of the West again if they can get past Cleveland. It's the same roster that just won the finals, except now Peyton Pritchard is the sixth man of the year. It's kind of incredible. This team just keeps getting better every single year. A couple guys get older, Holiday, Porzingis. I think they could go on one more run before they have to make some serious changes because, thanks to the Warriors, you can't keep the same six guys for multiple years anymore. So they're going to have to switch it up after one more ring this year.
Number one for me is where I have OKC best record in the NBA at 43-9. Also have the best point differential in the NBA at plus 13.4 per game. Along with that, the best defense in the NBA at 104.8 points per game, 24-3 at home, which we know has always been a tough place for teams to play going back to their past regime in the playoffs. Playing good ball as of right now, hopefully healthy by the playoffs. And they got the sizable lead in the Western Conference where they can kind of just ease it into the one seed the rest of the way through. And I think that definitely plays a factor for a lot of these guys that haven't played deep into the playoffs, is being able to get some rest in the regular season. And they have that rare ability to do so while still maintaining the number one seed. So I like OKC. I think they're set up for the best spot once we get to the playoffs. Which does it for the NBA Power Rankings and sends it back over to Skyler for his post-Super Bowl mock draft.
Good to talk a little basketball. Of course, now we're getting into the thick of things, but we're post-Super Bowl. We got our official draft order. We've been hearing things, specifically a guy like Daniel Jeremiah is a guy, if he starts tweeting like, hey, Tennessee's thinking this, you probably want to listen to him. So based off of what we've been hearing, I got a post-Super Bowl mock draft. Let's get right into it. Again, maybe switching things up. See, oh, well, if this guy goes early, then who falls? Or if this guy doesn't, let's do it. Tennessee, number one, they are going to trade the pick. That's what I've been hearing. A way to do it, I think, is with the New York Giants. That way you can stick in the top three and take whichever guy they were referring to when they said we don't pass on generational talents. So the Giants at one, I think, would take Shedeur Sanders, probably. I know that doesn't help the Raiders plan to find a quarterback, but this is all hypothetical. I just want to try something new. We gave the Raiders a quarterback last time. Number two, the Browns. I would really like to see Abdul Carter go and replace Myles Garrett, but at the end of the day, they just really need a quarterback. Cam Ward seems to be a guy who's not going to shy away from the challenge of Cleveland. I think that could actually work somehow. Number three, Tennessee. I'm going to give them Travis Hunter. I think they would play him probably mostly at receiver because of the money they've spent on the defense. But you never know. I'd let them do both. That leaves a very wide open spot here for New England at four. Abdul Carter. I'm sure Mike Vrabel would love taking him, and I'm sure he'll take whoever he thinks is the best athlete on the board. I've been hearing Mason Graham to the Jags at five is nearly a lock, which makes me very sad because I like Mason Graham, but I get it. They love their D line, and I guess there's no real left tackle here that they would take. But at number 6, the Bears don't necessarily need him to play left tackle right now. That's Will Campbell from LSU. I have them trading up with the Raiders spot. The Raiders get a couple extra picks, maybe to trade back up for a quarterback later, because we've surpassed the top 2 quarterbacks here. At number 7, the Jets. We got the news Rodgers won't be coming back. That means Devontae will not be either. So I have Ted McMillan. It's just a pick that I wanted to decide who would I not be upset if we picked here. And I think a solid wide receiver 2 next to Garrett Wilson is probably the best option here available. Carolina needs edge. I have James Pierce Jr. At number 9, the Saints. Will Johnson's fallen a little bit. He got cooked a little bit, apparently, in some workouts. Maybe he won't be that top 3 pick we had talked about in the past when you have Travis Hunter there. So he falls a little bit. And number 10, the Raiders. They will stick and pick here. I have Ashton Genty. I think that they could, with the extra couple picks they pick up from trading down a couple spots, could definitely trade back at the top of the second or end of the first. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like that. I obviously depends who we would get later on.
Yeah.
If we just skip up quarterback after quarterback after quarterback and end up with Aiden O'Connell as a week 1 starter, I would not be happy. But if we take Dart or even like a Will Howard or something like that, like the 4th or something, obviously also hinges on free agency. Sam Darnold spend the big, Adam Schefter saying perhaps going to the Raiders. So I wouldn't mind Genty. I definitely think that'd fix our run game pretty instantaneously. And then I would be all for it, your offensive rookie of the year pick. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's going to be such a weird offseason for our 2 teams. I mean, we're talking about Aiden O'Connell, Tyrod Taylor, Gardner Minshew, and Jordan that hasn't even played yet. Has a broken leg. So things will be weird for sure in the quarterback market. Niner fans will be very happy with Kelvin Banks, the tackle from Texas. That's got to be their top need at the moment. I'll go through some picks that I don't think I've ever matched together real quick. Shamar Stewart, edge rusher from Texas A&M to the Cowboys at 12. Genty's not there. Shamar Stewart dominated the Senior Bowl. He's a guy who could end up being like the number 2 or 3 edge just because he got to get out in front of all those GMs in person. We have Colson Love went to the Broncos. We've obviously talked about that one before. Jalen Walker to the Chargers. We've heard that they may move on from Bosa, and they've already moved on from Mac. So that could be a spot that opens up. Green Bay's been an interesting team in the news with their receivers and stuff, but I'm going to stick with what they need. That's a big D tackle, Kenneth Grant from Michigan. Get yourself a new Kenny Clark. Houston, I still think their number 1 need is guard. Tyler Booker's a top guard. I think even Daniel Jeremiah had him going like 6th to the Raiders in one of his mock drafts or something. And he even puts the note like, hey, I'm not doing this because I want it to happen. I'm not supporting Alabama. I'm doing it because I've been hearing something. And I'm not saying it's to the Raiders, just that, mystery top 10 team could be looking at him. How about Mike Green to the Lions, the big edge rusher from Marshall, dominated at the Senior Bowl too. Washington, how about Isaiah Bond? After seeing what Worthy did in the Super Bowl, I think that you may be right. We talked about the receivers earlier. Even if you don't have him ranked in your top 3, he's a guy who could be one of the top 3 receivers taken because of his speed. Kansas City desperately needs Cam Williams, the right tackle from Texas. And Philly doesn't really need anything on the defense, but Savon Ravel, the corner from East Carolina, dealing with the ACL. I have him falling here. This could definitely be a spot where not even just the Raiders, but any team looking for Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe could trade up to. And that's what we got, just experimenting with needs versus draft stock versus what they might do in free agency. But until free agency, all we can do is guess.
Yeah. Moving on from that, though, Layups bowl predictions. A lot of red, but not completely terrible last week. In the layup category, I had Philly money line. Obviously, that works. Skyler had Kelsey scores a touchdown. Travis Kelsey did not do really anything in the Super Bowl. This week, I'm going NA. I don't want to pick college basketball. I
Yeah.
don't want to pick NBA basketball. So maybe I'm sitting tight for a few weeks before we get MLB season rolling around.
Okay.
Um, so we got NA here.
Well, in case you do end up wanting to turn on some college basketball this week, there are some really good games. My layup is going to be number 9, St. John's. That's right. They haven't really done anything since Chris Mullen played there. I have them. There's no real line because it's not today. The game is on Wednesday. They're playing at Villanova. I'm going to guess anywhere from 5 to 7.5 points would be the line. St. John's is now being run by Rick Pitino, who used to coach Louisville and Kentucky and probably 15 other schools. Been to the tournament every year, and he got them ranked in the top 10. So just pretty cool story for a very small Big East school back in the top 10.
Yeah. Last week, bold predictions. I had Saquon, 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, he did not get a single one. Skyler had Jalen Hurts, 2 rushing touchdowns. Also did not happen, but was really close.
Yeah.
If Cooper DeJean went out at the 1, this would have been green. So unfortunately, red. This week, again, I don't have anything, but I don't want to do anything I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah. My bold prediction, again, college basketball, because on Saturday we have something we haven't seen since 2008. That's an AP number 1 against a number 2 in the regular season. It's Auburn and Alabama. 2008, it was Memphis, Kentucky, and Derrick Rose played on that Memphis team. That's how long ago this was. So this is a pretty big deal. Here's the thing, though. Auburn lost pretty badly to Florida. They should not be ranked number 1. Alabama will probably beat them. And then Alabama becomes number 1 next week. Maybe we do this again in a month in the SEC tournament, but these have kind of been 2 of the top 6 teams so far. SEC is back in basketball, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's going to do it, though, for episode 231. I know not the longest episode, but still good to get what we got this week. Next week, even deeper into the off season. I have most things. We'll figure out what
Some
we're going
spring
to do
training
then.
talk.
Yeah, that could be going on. I think we have. I don't know if we have a game until then, but we'll see.
Okay.
So next week,
maybe Pete Alonso gets signed by then. No, he's going to get signed in an hour. What?
Pete Alonso already did. Yeah, he went back to the Mets.
He went back to the Mets? What day? It must have been the day I didn't have my phone.
Like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well,
yeah.
We'll get back to this in a second, but
maybe Alex Bregman signs. That's what you meant to say right there.
That definitely could be. He didn't sign with the Cubs yet, right? They were looking for a backup option. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, never mind then.
Yeah. But next week we'll
Alex
see
Bregman signs.
There we go.
Freaking baseball. See what I mean? You got to do your research with baseball.
Yep.
All right, Kyle. We'll do this again next week for 232. Hopefully we got some more crazy breaking news like this. This trade deadline, Super Bowl, pretty packed week.
Yep. Peace.